Show of hands, how many people think I look different on TV? So it is a political season, so we're going to talk politics. Now that you're all sufficiently uncomfortable, we are going to talk about presidents, and we're going to talk about how our customers wish to become presidents. And we're going to talk about how the data that they share and the data that we've collected at Microsoft can help us better suit our customers' business needs. So I'll share that study with you. And I'll leave you with a call to action or something that you can take away from this meeting, where you can follow up further, discuss with your Microsoft account representative if that's something you desire to do. So why am I talking to you? So first of all, I've spent about half of my career in sales, selling to CMOs, selling to people like you. I spent the other half of my career in marketing, where, like you, I am marketing to many of the same constituents and the same people that you're reaching out to. And what that unique experience has given me is the ability to talk to you about many solutions that other CMOs are looking for, as I've spoken to many of them, as well as a lot of the solutions that our customers are looking for, having been in that role. But before I start, I'm going to share a story. So, So when I was a kid, back in the 70s, I used to wake up in the morning. I used to sneak downstairs, and I would turn on the television. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I used to turn it on to watch Sesame Street. And I had to sneak, because if I was too loud, I would wake up my parents, and they would say, "Go back to bed." And so I had to sneak. But I knew every morning, 7 a.m., Sesame Street. I was pre-programmed. Today, my kids, they're sneaking, but they're not sneaking downstairs. They're taking my laptop and they're taking my cell phone, and they're surfing the internet. They're going through Hulu. They're going through Netflix, and they're doing the same thing. Especially Sawyer, the one on the left. I mean, that kid's 1 year old, and he can surf the internet better than I can. But what I've just described to you is the evolution of marketing. This is the reality. It was radio, then newspaper, then TV, then computers. And now it's devices, and it's multiple devices. And it's more than just the device. It's also individualized. I'll share another story about this individualized marketing concept. So I am an avid do-it-yourselfer. On most weekends, I find myself on top of the house, under the house, or in between the walls of the house. I'm always doing something. As you can tell, for those of you that are close by, I have a perpetual Band-Aid on my finger because my wife does a good job of telling me that I'm not a very good do-it-yourselfer. But at any rate, because I'm such an avid do-it-yourselfer, I spend a lot of time at my local DIY store. And I share information with them so they can better market to me. I give them my data where I am, GPS data, IoT. I answer their surveys. I give feedback. And as a result of that, I get relevant contextual information sent back to me. I get special parking because I'm that kind of customer. I even get a special checkout line. I get treated like a president. And quite frankly, that's because I am a presidential candidate, okay? So, it turns out, the reality is that our studies show that 48% of our customers want brands to be able to better market to them with information that's relevant. And 57% of consumers, say that they will much rather buy from a brand that sends them relevant and contextual information. So what am I telling you here? I'm telling you that your consumers want to be treated like presidents. So how do we make this shift to customer-driven everything? How do we make this shift to not only marketing to Steve Forbes, 40-something-year-old male, but no, to Steve Forbes, who is working on an electrical project that needs this next thing for his project? How do we market to that individual? How many of you are marketing to that individual? And on top of that, how are you taking the different channels of media that's available to you, right? Be it social, whatever, the various media channels that are available on your consumers, and how are you making good use of that data? And then how is it integrated into your regular marketing rhythm and your marketing engines? How are we doing this advanced marketing? Let me get a show of hands of who's doing this well today. That's not surprising, because about 28% of marketers, or brands, say they do this today. About 23% of marketers say they do it at a good rate, whereas about 83% of marketers say they want to be doing it. So what have I just covered? I've covered that the majority of consumers want to be treated like presidents. The majority of brands, or using this analogy, being the constituents, we want to vote them into office. We want to treat them like presidents. So what's the problem? Well, that's what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss the problem, and we're going to discuss what we can do to start making our consumers presidents. So we conducted this survey called the Data Value Exchange Survey within Microsoft. And this survey comprised three countries, so the United States, France, and China, of 7,900 adults between 19 and 54. And we collected about 1.6 million conscious questions and 1 million subconscious questions, all around the data value exchange. So what is your data worth, and what does it mean to you? And what does it mean to the brand? And so what we found is that there's really 3 steps to moving people up the value ladder. Or in other words, 3 steps to making our consumers presidents. First, we have to make the data meaningful. It's got to be relevant. It sounds obvious, but it's true. I hate getting that text or that coupon about something that's of no interest to me. Second, we need to focus on personal benefits and respect boundaries. We'll find that different industries are more sensitive, and we as marketers need to be aware of that depending on the industry that we're in. Healthcare, for example, people are more sensitive. Entertainment, less sensitive. We'll talk more about that. And we need to eliminate the barriers to sharing. And we'll talk more about that as well. So the first one is making the data meaningful. Now, we in this room, we all should, as marketers, understand what consumer data means. Right? Consumer data is that constant digital stream of information on that demographic, on that person. Most individuals don't realize what consumer data is. Most consumers don't realize what consumer data is. Most consumers feel that consumer data is when they share with you their email address or their phone number. And unfortunately, we as marketers, we have programmed consumers to feel that that's all that data is. It's that email address, it's your name, it's your phone number. And why? Because we send them coupons and incentivize them by saying, give us this piece of data and we will give you a coupon. So we've essentially perpetuated this bad behavior of incentivizing consumers to feel that data is simply that. Only the savviest few consumers realize that data sharing is more than that, and that data sharing can actually provide more benefits to their lives than what it really is. So those consumers, the majority of consumers that don't realize what data is, they have this perception that brands are collecting more data than they are proactively sharing. This is called the sharing gap, right? This is the gap between what people believe brands are collecting versus what they share, what they are proactively sharing. And that data gap is around 14%. And the larger the gap, the less educated consumers are on what you're doing with their data, and the less inclined they are to want to share more data with you because they don't know what you're using it for. Most consumers feel that the data that you're collecting from them are going to be used for your benefit as marketers, for our benefit as marketers. We're going to use that to sell to other organizations. We're going to use it to send them more coupons. We're going to use it for our benefit, but not for theirs. The bigger the sharing gap, the bigger the problem. And as I said, the sharing gap varies by industry. So if you look at the sharing gap in healthcare, for example, you'll find it's quite large. If you look at the sharing gap in media and entertainment, it's quite low. And again, what that means is that those individuals, they feel that the brand is not collecting more information than they're willing to share, and so they don't feel they're doing any nefarious activity, or they feel that they're doing less nefarious activities with that gap. So what we did as part of this study is we put an XY axis on those that are willing to share and those that are less willing to share. So Those on the left-hand side of the X had a low awareness of data. In other words, they're not entirely fully sure what brands are collecting. They know they're collecting something, but they don't have a full conscious of the digital footprint that brands are collecting. Those on the right side, they have a good understanding of the digital activity that most brands collect, right? They understand what brands are doing with their information. Then on the y-axis, we looked at those that are not willing to share, right? And those that are willing to share. And what we found when we correlated this data with consumers' desire to try new products and services from a brand is that the more that we educated consumers on what we do with their information, the more of an opportunity it provides to us as marketers. The more we provided consumers with that information that said, this is what a brand does with your information, the more we were able to move them from the bottom left to the top right. And that is the opportunity for us as marketers. This is the opportunity for us to amplify the personal value of the data we're collecting from consumers so we can then market to them. So let's focus on those personal benefits. So how do we do this? So again, I mentioned how we have essentially pre-programmed consumers to feel that their data is only worth a coupon. So how do we change that perception, right? How do we start focusing on making that transition? And this is where it gets really good. We have to start focusing on the emotional benefits that consumers receive from sharing the data. And so we're going to talk about that sense of accomplishment. We're going to talk about that sense of organization, and we're going to talk about that sense of discoverability, because these are the three emotions that our studies show encourages consumers to share. So let's talk about the first one, which is achievement. 63% of consumers say they would much rather share information if it knows it can give them something in return. I feel really good when I've been eyeing that, that water heater or something. Let's just call it a water heater. I've been eyeing that for 6 months, and it's been a certain price. And then after a while, because of something I've been doing with my favorite DIY store, I've earned enough points where that water heater's half price. That's awesome. I feel a sense of accomplishment, and I'm pretty satisfied. That's an emotion that we need to tap into as marketers, because what that encourages us to do, it encourages us to share. And if we share that information, that enables marketers to track our activity, to provide us with that sense of achievement, it's good for me as a consumer, and it's good for the marketer. Nike does a great job of this. Anybody in here familiar with the Nike Fuel program? Excellent, fantastic. And this is such a great way to collect data and help people feel accomplished. You collect a certain amount of fuel points, and you realize that you can trade those fuel points in for a t-shirt or a pair of socks. But you know that if you run another 3 more weeks or you run another 30 miles, that you can trade that in for a great pair of sneakers. That's awesome. I get that sense of accomplishment. And also, Nike is capturing my data. They're capturing my activity. They're capturing my preferences. It's a win-win situation. And they're tapping into that sense of accomplishment for me, and I'm sharing with them. Order. Order is another great example of an emotion, or an organization, I should say, is another great example of an emotion that we should tap into. So again, 30% of consumers would share data in exchange for an organization that can help them with organization, a brand that can help them simplify their lives. Right? So if you think about that, why would that prompt someone to share? We're all pretty busy. We're all doing a lot of things. And in order for us to get organized, and if a brand can help us feel like, you know what, I've accomplished something, you helped me do it, then I feel pretty good about that. A great example of this is John Lewis. Anyone in here from the UK? Okay. John Lewis is a higher-end retailer in Great Britain. One thing I didn't share about my background is that I grew up in England. I know I have no accent, long story, but anyway. And my mother is a shopaholic, and she just I have childhood memories of being traumatized, of being dragged into John Lewis, and it's, anyway, I digress. But here's what John Lewis have done. So John Lewis created an app where you can go onto this app, and you can put in your shopping list, you can put in whatever you're going to buy on this app. You walk into the store, which is on Oxford Street, for anyone that knows England. You walk into the store, and they have beacons in the store that knows that you've entered the store. And as soon as it recognizes that you've entered the store, they collect your order, and it's at the checkout line waiting for you. It's a pretty awesome way of encouraging that user to share their location, their GPS information. We're talking IoT. And it's a great way for me to interact with that brand because that brand is appealing to my sense of organization. They're helping with that emotion of organization. It's fantastic. And they've done a really great job of doing that. The third emotion is discovery. Most consumers would much rather a brand can help them look for the item that they're looking for if they can help them along the way. I'll use my DIY example again. If I'm working on some electrical project around the house that I probably shouldn't be working on, and my favorite DIY store starts sending me information on landscaping, then I'm not going to pay attention. In fact, I'll probably be kind of frustrated. But if they are sending me information because they know I'm working on that electrical project and they're sending me information on conduit, on breakers, on fuse boxes, on junction boxes, whatever, I'm like, awesome. They're treating me like the president that I am. That's that sense of discovery. A great one is Lancome, and my wife actually is a big fan of their products. So they've created on their webpage where you can upload your photograph and you can see how you look before you buy the makeup. You can upload your photograph and you can see if you look good in warm tones or cool tones or dark colors, light colors, black, blue, whatever. You can see that first. And that helps you, number one, you don't waste your money buying a product that you might end up returning. And also, it helps with that discovery because they're helping you along the way. Right? So we have just appealed to that user to help them share information. And again, you're sharing your social profile, you're sharing your photo, and you're going to end up with a long-term consumer just because you've given them that information. This is what we're talking about with consumer data. It's more than an email address and a phone number. These are the types of things we want to encourage our consumers to share in order for us to better market to them. Now, the big question is, how do we get them to do that? What are the barriers to sharing? There's a number of barriers. Number one, bombardment. Nobody likes to get spammed. I mean, most of us, we almost have this almost knee-jerk reaction when we're filling out something or when someone asks for our email address. Are you going to start spamming us? Are you going to start selling that information to everybody? And that is a true barrier that we have to overcome. Of course, there's transparency. A lot of us don't really want to let brands into our lives unless we're going to understand what the value is of that information. Why would I give you that? And I need to understand the value. Then, of course, there's access. We've all heard about the hacking issues with Target and various others. And that, again, creates an innate barrier to sharing information. And the confluence of those three things, that's just control. And we don't want to relinquish that control. Now, I wouldn't be talking to you if I wasn't going to give you a reason as to how we can overcome those things. How do we eliminate those barriers to sharing? The why. The why is this. The why is everything that I've talked about in those three scenarios. The why is helping consumers understand the value of their data, the value of sharing information. Hey, if I share my grocery list or my shopping list with John Lewis, they're going to organize it for me, right? If I upload my photograph to Lancome, they're going to help me decide if I see something that I like before I waste money buying something that I return. If I share my achievements with Nike, then I get a free pair of sneakers. Consumers need to better understand the value in data that they're sharing, and we will thus eliminate those barriers to sharing. Consumers they all get to be treated like the presidents that they want to be treated like, that we know they want to be treated like. So, I've just discussed these things here. We need to make sure our consumers understand what data is. So that's education. We need to be upfront. If it's one thing that a lot of marketers that I've spoken to over my career have told me, and a lot of things that I've realized that we don't do a good job, explaining the value of the data that we're asking you for. If we can do a better job as marketers explaining what you will get in return for sharing that information, then we will in turn get to positive permission-based data exchanges. And let me say that again, positive permission-based data exchanges. Earlier when I was talking about the sharing gap, that sharing gap existed because consumers don't know what you're collecting, why you're collecting, and what you're doing with their data. You educate them on what you want, what their data is for, and what you're going to be doing with it, and it becomes a reciprocal relationship. And that's how we eliminate the barriers to sharing. So we go back to my graph, right? As I mentioned, we did the XY graph. On one end, we had consumers that had a low awareness of data. On the right side, consumers that have a high awareness of data. Again, I had the Y, right? And on the Y, you had at the bottom those that were not willing to share information, right? So there's a lot of people that don't want to share because they're scared. And on the top, we had those that were willing to share. Now, as part of this study, we profiled these users, and we profiled them based on willing to share, not willing to share, awareness of data, less awareness of data, and those that are willing to try new products and services. And it turns out those customers that have a higher awareness of data are much more willing to try new products and services. So we profile them into 6 buckets. So you have satisfied sharers, enthused explorers, and let me step back. Satisfied sharers. So satisfied sharers, low awareness of data. They don't really know what brands are collecting, why they're collecting it, what they're doing with it, right? They are, however, much more willing to share, and they're much more willing to try new products and services. Then you have the enthused explorers. Enthused explorers would be the folks that, they know that brands are collecting some information, probably more than they're proactively providing. They know that, but they're okay with that because they know that they're also willing to try new products and services. That's another bucket of people. And then you've got the savvy sophisticates. And the savvy sophisticates, they know that brands, they got their digital footprint all over the place. The brands are collecting information. They know their IoT information, their GPS information, their location data. They're giving them information. They just know that brands are collecting all sorts of stuff about them. And they're willing to give them more stuff. And they're also willing to try new products and services. Now, at the bottom end, you have the nervous neophytes. Now, the nervous neophytes, they're sitting in front of their computer, probably chewing their nails because they're too nervous about whatever information they share, what's that brand going to do with that information. They have a very low awareness of data. They don't really know what brands are doing, and they're not really trying to try new things. And then you go into the cautious contributors that know that brands are doing something. They know they're collecting a little bit more information, but they really don't want to do much with that brand, or they don't really want to buy anything other than what they want to buy. And then you have the observant objectors, which like the savvy sophisticates, they know brands are collecting a lot more information, but they are blatantly objecting to do anything more with that brand. So why am I sharing this with you? Because it turns out that the majority of us, the majority of consumers, are below the line. And what does that mean? That means opportunity for us as marketers. Our opportunity is to convert all those below the line to those above the line. We convert those buyers from being those nervous neophytes, those cautious contributors, and those observant objectors. You convert them to above the line, and you then have consumers that are much more willing to try new products and services. And again, how do you convert them? You share with them what the value of their data will give them. So the key takeaways: make data meaningful. We need to reprogram our customers. When we ask them for data, let them know that it's not just for a coupon or for a gift certificate, or it's not for some nefarious reason or to sell them information or to sell their data. It's to help them make smarter buying decisions. We have to respect boundaries. So depending on the industry we're in, and I assume there's a good splattering of industries here, the industry we're in will help determine what types of information we want to ask and how far we can go. For example, healthcare, big gap, right? Healthcare, consumers feel that their brands are taking much more information than they're willing to share, whereas again, entertainment, a lot less. So we have to recognize what those boundaries are and better market to those boundaries, because in some industries, we already have an uphill battle. and eliminate those barriers to sharing. By providing the insights, letting consumers know that their data is going to be used for the value that we've explained in those 3 examples, will eliminate those barriers to sharing. So now what? So how do we do this? So there's a lot of noise, and how do we find that signal through the noise? The noise is abundant. I mean, there's noise from different data sources. There's noise from different vendors saying they can help you with this. There's noise from different consumers giving you different media streams and different content. There's social media. There's just so much information. There's information overload, if you like. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the noise, there are 2 times data growth every 2 years. So all the data that exists on the planet today will be double that in 2 years. And 90% of the data that we have today was created in the last 2 years. I love this quote from Jack Welch. If the rate of change is greater on the outside than it is on the inside, then the end is near. Think about some of the change that we're experiencing right now. We used to say Walmart is synonymous with retail. Now we say Amazon. We used to think, if someone said, transportation, yellow cab, you would think yellow cab, but now you think Uber. You used to think that Starwood was synonymous with hospitality, but now people say Airbnb. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can say Tesla, Stripe, Square. I mean, disruption is all around us. And the big statistic here is that 89% of the Fortune 500 that was here in 1955 are gone today. Only 11% of the Fortune 500 that existed back then exists today. And why is that? Because of Jack Welch's quote. I love that quote. If the rate of change is greater on the outside than it is on the inside, then the end is near. We must adapt to survive. We have to think about different ways we are marketing to our constituents. Think about different ways we're marketing. Again, they want to be treated like presidents, so how do we make that happen? So there's a lot of noise. I mean, like I said, there's a gazillion vendors out there. I mean, you've got vendors that want to help you build apps and build a ton of apps like the John Lewis example or others. And you can do that or you could build your own. There's the back end, which is obviously very scary. And this is one of Microsoft's sweet spot, is how do we connect all those different data resources together? And we can certainly help with that. And then there's reporting. And then the reporting is a lot of the stuff that you've seen and shared today. And that's really how we start finding that signal, right? We connect those 3 main pieces of bodies of work, and that's kind of how we move through to the next step. So a great example of an organization that found the data through the noise or found the signal through the noise is Real Madrid. Real Madrid, they're a fantastic franchise, great brand in Spain, and the Spanish football team. And they recognize that they have more fans on the outside than they actually do come into the stadium. And so it is probably a commercial. There is a commercial on this one that some of you may have seen. So they reached out to Microsoft, and it's like, hey, we really want your help to help us find that signal through the noise. And so we help them by ensuring that those fans are having the same experience through various things like they're able to create mock games, they're able to create their own teams, they're able to do mock plays, they're able to do various things, whether they are in Spain or whether they're some other country. But they're able to have that individualized segment of one experience. And they're being marketed to by Real Madrid as an individual, as that individual person. Again, using various tools that they may already have, but making it work for them so they're able to better market to those individuals. It's a great example of an organization that's really taking a lot of the data out there and making good use of it. So how do we help? So we can, if you like, we can do, for those of you that are customers or that use our solutions, and many of you probably already have a lot of our stuff, the trick is how do you correlate all the stuff that you already have, and how do you make better use of it to find that signal? How do you use things like analytics, BI, and how do you really take that information so you can target your segment of one, so you can make all your customers feel like the presidents they want to be? If that's something you're interested in, we can certainly help you with that. There are also many other organizations that do that as well, but that would be the key takeaway that you could take from this. And of course, you can always contact your account manager if you have one. You can feel free to reach out to me. And more importantly, if you want to read the study that I just referenced, you can certainly take a picture of the screen and you can download it and you can read it at your leisure. And with that, thank you very much.